No, it was just the way things happened, It started off I didn't write, they wrote, then I started to write.
Most people remember George Harrison as the quiet Beatle, the calm, spiritual one, the guy who seemed too peaceful to ever hold a grudge. He stood beside Lennon, McCartney, and Starr as they made hits that defined generations. Songs like Yesterday, Let It Be, and Hey Jude. But behind that calm smile was a storm he kept hidden for years. One of his very own bandmates pushed him to his lowest point, embarrassed him, betrayed him, and left scars that haunted him till his final breath. When George finally opened up about what really happened at 58 years old, the world was shocked. It flipped everything fans thought they knew about the quiet Beatle. But before revealing who Harrison could never forgive, we need to rewind back to his early days, long before the fame and flashing lights, to see how his childhood shaped him and why that betrayal cut so deep. Before the world knew him as a legend, George was just a small kid growing up in a cramped, two-up, two-down house at 12 Arnold Grove in Liverpool. Born on February 25th, 1943, little George spent his first years in a home so cold you could literally see your breath inside during winter. The toilet was out in the yard, and the thin walls seemed to hold in more wind than warmth. Inside that tiny house lived a close-knit family and a mother who noticed something special about her youngest son. Louise Harrison, whose singing could shake the windows, neighbors used to joke about it, had a strange little habit while she was pregnant. Something about it made George's story feel almost destined for greatness. Every Sunday, George's mother had a ritual. She tuned the radio to Radio India, letting the hypnotic rhythm of sitars and tablas echo through their tiny home. She believed those mystical sounds would calm the restless baby inside her, and she was right. Years later, George said those melodies never left him. They were in his bones, shaping his spirit long before he ever touched a guitar. It almost felt like destiny whispering in the background. As a kid, George filled his school notebooks with doodles of guitars, strumming his dreams into the margins. But school, it felt like a cage to him. No guitars, no freedom, no space for a kid who only wanted to make music. Everything changed one ordinary afternoon in 1956 when he was riding his bike through the neighborhood. From a nearby window came a sound that froze him in place. Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel blasting through the air. George said that moment hit like an explosion in a place where nothing exciting ever happened. To him, Elvis's voice sounded like a door swinging open to a whole new world. At just 14, he begged his mom for a guitar, and Louise somehow scraped together 3 pounds, 10 shillings, a small fortune for the family. George practiced until his fingers were raw, chasing that sound that had blown his mind. Inspired by Lonnie Donegan's skiffle craze, he started his first group, the Rebels. It was rough, it was loud, but it was theirs. Then fate stepped in again. On his school bus, George met a boy named Paul McCartney. Same bus route, same obsession with guitars. Paul would later call George his baby brother, but back then, they were just 2 kids leaning over bus seats, swapping chords and dreaming of stages they'd never seen. By March 1958, Paul brought George to audition for John Lennon's band, the Quarrymen. But Lennon took one look and thought he was too young. "He looks 12, John complained. But George wasn't backing down. Right there on a bus in the dark, he ripped through a fiery guitar solo so raw it shut everyone up. The only light came from a flickering street lamp outside. And when he finished, Lennon's silence said it all. George was in. Just like that, 3 boys from Liverpool, armed with cheap guitars and wild dreams, began their climb, never knowing that fame, jealousy, and betrayal would one day turn their brotherhood into a battle that left scars they'd never healed from. And the one who would wound George the deepest? John Lennon. When the Beatles hit their highest peak, that's exactly when George's world inside the band started falling apart, especially with John. To the outside world, they looked unbreakable, 4 brothers who could do no wrong. But behind the walls of Studio 2 at Abbey Road, George felt invisible, like the odd man out in the very band he helped build. John, the man George once idolized, became the one who tore him down the most. The cracks started showing in the mid-1960s, right when George began to find his own voice as a songwriter. He brought in his track, If I Needed Someone, with rare confidence, ready to prove himself. But John didn't even give it a chance. He glanced at it and muttered, "It's nothing." It wasn't feedback. It was flat-out dismissal. That night, George went home in silence and told Patty Boyd just one thing. John didn't even listen to it. From that point on, every time George grew, John seemed to drift further away, as if Harrison's rise was something Lennon just couldn't handle. And when George dove deep into meditation and Indian spirituality, hoping to find peace, John openly mocked him in front of everyone, saying, "You and your gurus." The man he once looked up to had turned into his harshest critic, and it cut deep. "It's just another trap." That's what John said. And George didn't fight back. But Ringo later revealed that the look on George's face said it all, like someone had stabbed him right there in front of everyone. That silent heartbreak was the beginning of the end. The real breaking point came during the Let It Be sessions. In the raw 2021 Get Back footage, you can see it happen. George trying to explain a guitar idea, desperate to be heard, while John just stares into space, ignoring him completely. The room goes cold, the tension unbearable. After a few heavy seconds, George finally breaks and blurts out, "I'll play whatever you want, or I won't play at all." You can almost feel years of frustration explode in that one line. When the Beatles finally split, that buried anger didn't fade. It detonated. By 1973, during John's infamous Lost Weekend in New York, fate threw them together again in a hotel room. Everyone expected a friendly reunion between old friends, but what went down shocked everyone there. John casually mentioned the idea of playing Madison Square Garden together, but George's reaction stunned the room. He suddenly stood up, face flushed with fury, and shouted, "Where were you when I needed you?" Before anyone could react, George reached out, snatched John's glasses right off his face, and hurled them to the floor. According to May Pang, John's girlfriend at the time, Lennon froze, completely still, completely shocked. She later wrote that it was the one time in John's life he was genuinely afraid of George Harrison. The quiet Beatle had finally snapped, unleashing 10 years of silence, humiliation, and heartbreak in one fiery moment. For once, all that pain he'd swallowed came bursting out for the world to see. Not John Lennon, but Paul McCartney was the one George Harrison quietly resented all the way to his final days. People always talk about George's tension with John, but here's the truth that still shocks even the most loyal Beatles fans. The relationship that truly tormented George wasn't explosive like with John. It was colder, quieter, and cut way deeper. Their rift started slow, almost invisible at first, back in the late 60s, when Paul began tightening his grip on the Beatles' sound. George would spend months perfecting songs, pouring his soul into them, only for Paul to step in, rearranging them right there in the studio, like George's effort meant nothing. Sound engineer Jeff Emmerich later recalled how Paul would literally stand over George's shoulder, telling him exactly how to play parts he himself had written. It wasn't guidance, it was control. Emmerich said the atmosphere got suffocating, and you can feel why. Years later, George finally admitted the emotional toll it took. In one rare 1974 interview, he dropped a line that stunned fans. "Paul ruined me as a guitarist, not technically, emotionally." That one sentence revealed everything. Paul's constant corrections, his endless direction, his lack of trust. It chipped away at George's confidence until it nearly disappeared. The worst moment came during the Maxwell Silver Hammer sessions. Everyone in the band hated that song, but Paul kept pushing, take after take, hour after hour. At one point, George muttered to Ringo, "Why are we doing this?" Paul overheard and snapped back, "Because it's my song." That sharp tone burned into George's memory and never left him. But the real breaking point came just a few months later, January 1969. Day 2 of the Let It Be sessions. George finally had enough and told Paul straight up he didn't like being bossed around about his guitar parts. The air went icy, the tension was unbearable, and for George, that was the moment he realized their friendship might never fully recover. Paul tried to keep his cool and said, "I'm trying to help you, George." But George fired back with a line that Beatles historians still call the most brutally honest moment in the entire film. "You don't listen to anyone else." That one sentence hit like a thunderclap. It was George's way of saying he felt invisible, overshadowed by the powerhouse duo of Lennon and McCartney. Even decades later, that bitterness never completely faded. In 1987, when George was asked if he'd ever start a band with Paul again, he didn't hesitate for a second. "I'd join a band with John, but not with Paul," he said. Then, almost to soften it, he added, "It's nothing personal, just musical." But everyone knew the truth. It was personal. That wound between them never truly healed, and Paul never fully grasped just how deep it went. By the final years of his life, George was still carrying the heartbreak of a friendship that could never find its balance. His last chapter began quietly, long before the world knew anything was wrong. By the late 1990s, George had already fought off throat cancer, then lung cancer, and finally a brain tumor that left him frail but fiercely determined to keep creating. Even as his body weakened, his spirit stayed strong. He kept working on the songs that would become his final masterpiece, Brainwashed. His son, Donnie Harrison, later remembered walking into the studio and seeing his father softly whispering melodies into a recorder because his voice was too weak to sing out loud. That image, George hunched over, fragile but still creating, said everything. Every note carried urgency, as if he knew time was running out and he had one last message to leave behind. In those final weeks, the pain grew sharper, and the looks on the doctors' faces told the truth no one wanted to say. George was racing against time, still chasing music even as his strength slipped away. George didn't need the doctors to tell him the truth. He already knew. Quietly, he asked to be taken to Los Angeles, to a private home owned by Gavin DeBecker, where he could spend his final days surrounded by Olivia and Donnie. The room was peaceful, filled with soft light, gentle flowers, and the sound of devotional chanting that had been with him since 1966. It wasn't for show. It was his comfort, his way of finding peace when the pain hit hardest. As November 2001 drew to a close, speaking became nearly impossible for him. Each breath grew slower, each word softer. Visitors came in small waves, some to pray, others just to sit beside him. Ravi Shankar sent messages of love and devotion. Tom Petty broke down crying over the phone. Even Paul McCartney came to say goodbye. And though their past was heavy, the moment between them was emotional, awkward, and quietly beautiful. On November 29th, 2001, surrounded by Olivia and Donnie, George's body began to give in. His breathing slowed, his eyes softened, and peace seemed to settle over him. As his family recited prayers from the Bhagavad Gita, the same sacred words that had guided him for decades, George whispered something faint, a final message only his loved ones could hear. And then, with calm acceptance, the quiet Beatle finally let go. What happened next surprised even those inside the music world. In a deeply private ceremony, his ashes were carried to India and released into the Ganges and Yamuna rivers, just as he had always wanted. No spotlight, no press, just simplicity, devotion, and love. It was a farewell that felt completely him, spiritual, serene, and connected to the roots that shaped his soul and his sound. And though his voice faded, George Harrison's legacy only grows stronger every single year. Proof that even the quietest spirit can leave an echo that never dies. In the years after George's passing, the world began to realize just how deep his influence truly ran. His music wasn't just remembered. It grew, spreading through generations that never even saw him play live. Fans young and old started rediscovering the depth behind songs like While My Guitar Gently Weeps and Here Comes the Sun, realizing those melodies carried pieces of his soul. Tributes poured in from everywhere. Eric Clapton organized the legendary concert for George in 2002, filling the Royal Albert Hall with friends and idols playing his songs through tears and laughter. It wasn't just a concert. It was a spiritual celebration, exactly how George would have wanted it. As Clapton said, he left us his love in music. And that night, you could feel it in every chord. Even Paul McCartney, who once clashed so hard with George, couldn't hide his emotion. On stage, Paul's voice cracked as he called George his little brother and played something on a ukulele, George's favorite instrument. That performance turned heartbreak into harmony, a final healing moment between two souls who had once been divided. Meanwhile, George's legacy stretched far beyond music. His devotion to Indian spirituality and his work with Ravi Shankar opened the West's ears to an entirely new sound and philosophy. He wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was chasing meaning. From the Beatles' psychedelic experiments to his solo work, George had been planting seeds of peace, faith, and awareness that still bloom today. Even in pop culture, his energy lingers. His words, his humor, his quiet rebellion. Artists from Oasis to Coldplay have cited him as inspiration, and his message of calm amid chaos feels more powerful now than ever. More than a Beatle, George Harrison became a symbol, a reminder that silence can speak louder than noise, that faith can outshine fame, and that sometimes the quietest voices leave the loudest echoes. His story didn't end in that soft-lit room in Los Angeles. It's still being sung, whispered, and felt by millions across the world who find peace in the music of the man who simply wanted to love and be loved. Even decades after his passing, George's presence still feels alive, as if the world refuses to let go of the calm, soulful man behind that shy smile. Every few years, unreleased demos, unseen footage, and heartfelt interviews resurface, giving fans fresh glimpses into the mind of the Beatle, who quietly redefined what it meant to be a rock star. Each rediscovery feels like George reaching out from beyond, reminding everyone that his music wasn't about fame, it was about truth. His son, Donnie Harrison, has become the keeper of that truth. With the same soft tone and sharp wit as his father, Donnie has carried George's legacy into a new era, remastering albums, finishing his father's last recordings, and making sure the world never forgets what made George's music so unique. Together with Olivia, they've protected his story from being twisted by myth or media. They've kept it pure. And that purity shows in every tribute that still fills arenas around the world. Whether it's a soft ukulele version of Something echoing through a stadium or crowds singing Here Comes the Sun at sunrise festivals, George's spirit is everywhere. His words about love, faith, and letting go still hit harder than most modern lyrics could ever dream to. But beyond the stage and spotlight, George's influence changed how rock stars lived their lives. Before him, few musicians talked openly about meditation, vegetarianism, or spiritual peace. But he did. He didn't care if people thought it was weird. He cared about being real. That fearless authenticity inspired generations to chase something deeper than fame, to chase balance. Even now, when life gets loud and the world feels out of tune, people turn to his songs for calm. His voice, gentle but grounded, still reminds us that everything passes, and love is all that really stays. The quiet Beatle may have walked away from this world, but his music never stopped playing. It's the eternal echo of a man who found peace in sound and left the world singing along. George Harrison's story is more than music. It's a lesson in grace, pain, and transformation. From the cramped streets of Liverpool to the sacred banks of the Ganges, his life played out like a melody, starting softly, building with struggle, and ending in peace. Even now, decades later, every time Here Comes the Sun plays, the world seems to pause, breathe, and remember the man who found light in the middle of darkness. He wasn't just the quiet Beatle. He was the soul of the Beatles, the one who turned silence into sound and spirituality into song. His journey through ego, heartbreak, betrayal, and healing turned him into something bigger than a rock legend. He became proof that fame means nothing without peace of mind. That's why George still stands apart. Not louder, not flashier, but truer. Look at what he left behind. Music that still moves millions. A family who guards his legacy with love. And a message that outlived every chart, every rumor, every rivalry. George showed that you can walk away from the noise and still be heard louder than anyone else. What an ending. What a man. So as we wrap up this story, remember what George always believed. Love, truth, and faith outshine everything else. His songs keep reminding us to stay kind, stay grounded, and never lose the light inside, no matter how heavy life gets. If you felt connected to this story, if George's journey touched you even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who loves music, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us, what's your favorite George Harrison moment or song? We want to hear from you. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories, deeper dives, and raw truths behind the legends who shaped music forever. George's story might have ended in this world, but the echo of his spirit will keep playing louder than ever.